there are many more Christians who are living below the standard that God has for us versus the people who are actually showing workings. Like, your spiritual life is not just supposed to be a spiritual life. One of the major issues with us as believers is that we want to depend on God. It's like a marriage relationship where it should be 100-100 because everybody has a part to play. If you bring your part, it is inevitably concluded that God will show up because he's faithful and he never fails. Sometimes I feel like Christians have adopted a mind that it's God that will help us, and so you find a lot of mediocrity in our lives. We're not doing things as excellently as you can with the resources that you have at the time, dragging your feet back because God is able. Meanwhile, world people don't have that same hope of God is able, so they put their whole everything into what they are doing. We need to stop giving God a bad name. We need to stop giving Christianity a bad name. Yes, the grace of God is available, but grace will not do your part for you. Grace can make doing your part easier. Grace can cause people to favor you and shorten the time that it takes you to do things, but ultimately you have a role, you have a part that if you don't do, then the thing cannot happen. The vision cannot come to pass. The life that God has for you cannot be. The Bible gave us a formula for good success, the God kind of success. Hello friends, welcome to Abide, the podcast. Now, usually my episodes are pretty planned out. Like, I have talking points and things that I want to say, but today is kind of a little bit different. I just want to share some thoughts with you that have been going in my head, some things I've been ruminating on, and it's going to be very unstructured, very scattered, but I think you might enjoy it. Let's see how this goes, the free-flowing vibe. Grab yourself a cup of tea, and if you happen to watch this episode anytime in August, then that means I achieved my goal of actually stopping the overthinking and just doing some more. Stop trying to be perfect and just move and perfect it on the way. You know what I'm saying? Let's start with that thought. Oh, I didn't do the intro. Welcome to Abide the podcast. Let's do this again. Hi friends, welcome to Abide the podcast. Here we have conversations and tell stories around living your best life through intimacy with God. Okay. If you're like me, you have a lot of vision, you have a lot of big dreams, you have a lot of ideas, and it feels like there's a constant flow of ideas and things to do. And somehow, there's not a lot of doing going on, but there's a lot of dreaming going on, there's a lot of visionarying going on, and not a lot of action going on, or at least when you compare the vision and the action, they are not in equal proportion. There's a book I read yearly that I'm almost done with. It's called 40 Years So Fast. It's basically about a journey to authenticity. And one of the things that I gleaned from one of the days in the book is the fact that having a lot of vision with little to no action basically becomes like poison to your soul. I reckon that the fact that sometimes we have so much ideas, so much this, so much that, creative people, if you're creative, you probably relate to this in some ways, right? And then somehow become overwhelmed by the ideas that you don't even know which one to pick. Like, that happens to me all the time. Like, I have 1,000 ideas running through my mind, and it's just like the constant flow of ideas gets me to a point where I'm now almost paralyzed in terms of taking an action. That's one thing that I struggle with, right? And in this season of my life, one thing that I'm really, really trying to teach myself is to just do more. And the problem is not that the things that I want to do are necessarily too hard. They might be hard, but like there are small steps that are doable to actually begin the journey. But I think that it is a matter of wanting things to appear perfect. I feel like there's an undertone of pride in that, where I don't necessarily want to look small or look imperfect or be seen to be struggling when I know that I can do better. No, not that I can do better. Of course I can do better on the journey. I can always get better, but let me use a vivid example. This podcast Abide, I feel like it's been on and off for a long period of time, and it's simply because at different points there's just always something that I don't have that makes me feel like this quality is, like, for example, I'm currently recording with my phone, and my second phone is my microphone because my camera is bad. And even like filming the podcast, that my preferred setup would be have, like 3 cameras, show the side angle, show this, show that. Like, I want it to look a certain way, and that's what I have in my head. Right now, I don't have that, and I don't have the resources to have a full studio setup. I don't have all that. But guess what? If I had been doing this consistently for like, when did I start this podcast? Maybe more than a year ago. Probably at this point in time, the podcast would have been able to fund all the resources, do you understand, to get to the point where I'm able to have those things that I'm looking for. But then, all this time has passed and nothing has changed. And time is still going to keep passing. And so the concept of numbering your days just keeps coming to mind, right? What's that scripture? I think it's Proverbs 8 verse 10 or 10 verse 8. I can't remember which one. That talks about like numbering your days. It's almost like we forget that time is actually still passing. Whether you start looking foolish now or not, eventually you are still going to have the time that you would have used to probably get to a decent point on the journey has still passed regardless. And it's a waste of time. And there's something that my pastor usually says, which is that sometimes like seasons are unforgiving. If God gives you a vision or a plan that you know is not a vision for the future, that is something that you should be doing right now, and you allow that season to pass, is like the potency or the effect of what you would have had when you started doing it at the time that you were given the instruction versus much later. It kind of reduces in potency, because it's like God gives his word and there's an enablement and there's like a power that follows the word that he gives. It gives you a vision, he gives you the enablement and the power to actually pursue it. And there is potency in following instructions now and not procrastinating until you feel like you have the resources to do it in a certain way. The God that gave you the vision at that time knew the resources that you had available to you, and he knew that you could do something with what you had. I feel like this episode is more for me. It's more for me to kind of, let's consider this a diary episode. It will be conversations that I usually like just have with God and go. And so I'm kind of just expressing all the streams of thoughts that I have. And I feel like it's something to think about and take back to God and act upon. So yes, in this season of my life, one of the major things that I'm really trying to do away with is procrastination, is overthinking, appear perfect, or have things be aesthetically pleasing in the way that I want them to be. Because literally, that's not my current reality. It's not realistic for me to keep postponing things until I, in quotes, how do I then get the resources I'm looking for to make it as aesthetically pleasing as I want it to be? That's crazy. Again, my pastor says, have a bias for action. Have a bias for action. Do more than you think. Do more than you are thinking about your plans. Because I feel another thing that really happens is when you spend so much time dreaming and visioning, it almost kind of, your brain can be tricked. So it gives you somehow a similar effect as you actually doing the thing. I live so much in my head that sometimes I feel like the thought of the thing is almost as satisfying as the thing itself. Crazy. I saw something on social media that really pissed me off. So the video was of a guy basically mocking Christians and believers and saying, you people will go to church and you would give your tithes, your 10% without fail. But when it is time for you to break into the tech industry or, do something that is related to work, you then come and ask me to show you the way. Go and ask your pastors. Go and ask your whatever. And then he said something about what God cannot do does not exist. Then go and meet your pastor and ask him how and get the help that you need. Because all you do is give, and you get nothing in return. And let me tell you, I was livid. I was pissed. It tinged me a lot because he's not lying. He's not lying that somehow it appears that there's not enough believers who are doing excellent things, who are wealthy. And don't get me wrong, I know a lot of believers who are actually prospering, who are doing well in their fields, who are excellent in their fields. Yes, I know people like that. However, In a country like Nigeria, where there's a vast majority of people who are religious and who identify as either Christian or whatever religion, right? There are a lot of religious people in this country. The percentage of those people versus the people who are actually making a mark in their lives and in their industries, it cannot be compared. There are many more Christians who are living below the standard that God has for us versus the people who are actually showing workings. Like your spiritual life is not just supposed to be a spiritual life. There's supposed to be, like, the spiritual should show workings in your actual interaction in the world. Who is that person in the Bible? Let's talk about Solomon, for example, right? God gave him wisdom, and the wisdom was seen. It wasn't about the things that he was saying or how wise he sounded. That's another thing in this generation. God has given us a lot of knowledge, a lot of revelation. And so we're very smart, mind smart. But a lot of times it feels like maybe it's not necessarily showing in the workings. You have so much in your mind, so much in your brain, but where is the tangible results? Like, show workings. You know what I'm saying? Show workings. It pinched me so much that he's right in a lot of ways, in a lot of settings. That is the reality. And it's not good enough. Could we make a mess of Christianity by having small lives? We make a mess of what Jesus did on the cross by having small lives. Adaeze. Consider also Daniel, who basically rose to the top of the government as a result of his wisdom, which was a result of his intimacy with God. He showed his excellence in his doings. He translated from the spiritual to the working of his hands. Somebody had asked me something, and after that moment, I had to repent because I kind of magnified the result I was getting. Why did I feel the need to make myself look like I'm getting more results than I actually am? Because I kind of feel like this is the results I should be getting. But I haven't done the things that will enable me to get those results. And so there's an incongruency between what it is in my heart and in my mind and what I'm living out. There's a misalignment between the things that I know that I can be, that I should be experiencing versus what my actual experience is. And so I felt the need to add some glitter here and there and make it look a little more glamorous than it actually is. Don't get me wrong, yet another thought. I told you this is a stream of thoughts episode. There is a place for being content in where you are, but I feel like you cannot even be content, especially when you know that you're not doing the best that you can do. When you are actually putting in the required work, then you can trust in God and know that it's a matter of time. Because His word does say there is a due season. In due time, there is a due time with God, and you cannot really shorten your process by yourself. You cannot work yourself hard into shortening the process if you're going to do it God's way. Of course, it's a biblical principle and it's a world principle. It's like gravity. What you sow is what you reap. So if you sow in a lot of work, a lot of hard work, possibly, with the right, human connections here and there and chance and time, you are very likely to succeed in your field. However, I feel like one of the major issues with us as believers is that we want to depend on God. And guess what? That's a great thing, as you should. As you quite literally should. It's like a marriage relationship where it should be 100-100 because everybody has a part to play. Everybody has a role to play. You bring your 100, I bring my 100, and we make it work that way. So God brings his 100, but a lot of times it feels like we are kind of waiting and depending on the grace of God. Somehow, sometimes I feel like Christians have adopted a mind that, it's God that will help us. And so you find a lot of mediocrity in our lives. You find a lot of not necessarily putting in your best work or putting your best foot forward or not doing things as excellently as you can with the resources that you have at the time, or dragging your feet back because, God is able. Meanwhile, world people don't have that same hope of God is able, so they put their whole everything into what they are doing. Do you get where I'm coming from? You see my drift right there? If any of these things I'm saying is kind of resonating with you, I feel like we need to stop giving God a bad name. We need to stop giving Christianity a bad name, and we need to do what we need to do and live out our spirituality in real life. The Bible gave us a formula for good success, the God kind of success. Joshua 1:8, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate on it day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein, and then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. The key is the doing. And remember, a lot of it says, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou, so that's your work. I have the work and the job to meditate on the word day and night. Then I have the job to do according to all that is written therein. But remember again, as believers, a lot of our doing is powered by God. The major responsibility is actually showing up, and God kind of powers everything. So as with everything in Christianity, it is always a partnership. There's the God part, but there's the you part. If you don't bring your part, and it's just, then God doesn't have anything to work with. If you bring your part, it is inevitably concluded that God will show up, because he's faithful and he never fails. And also understanding the seasons of your life, because the level to which I could do things before is not the same. It's not at the same pace right now anymore, because I have a young child. I don't have as much time as I used to have. I don't have as much brain space as I used to have, at least for in this season where he's still a baby. But the time will also come when he starts going to school and I have even more time. Just understanding how to adjust your doing per season. Right now, I cannot come and put 25 million things on my to-do list and expect that I'll get it done. We also have to just kind of walk with the Lord, because ultimately, God doesn't just want to be involved in the big things. He wants to be involved in the day-to-day. As you're planning out your day, the right thing to bring God in and say, okay, God, this is today. What are we doing today? How can I plan this week or this month in a way that I'm able to get the things that you actually want me to do done? How do I prioritize my time correctly? What are the things I need to hold on for now? What are the things that I need to be focusing on for now? Because that's another thing. Yes, I have a lot of vision, a lot of plans, but there are things that cannot happen in this season. But there are also things I can be focusing on in this season. I'm not going to lie to you guys. When I saw that post, I was so pissed. I'm not even in the category of people that he's talking about. But yes, the grace of God is available. But grace will not do your part for you. Grace can make doing your part easier. Grace can cause people to favor you and shorten the time that it takes you to do things. But ultimately, you have a role, you have a part that if you don't do, then the thing cannot happen. The vision cannot come to pass. The life that God has for you cannot be. Oh yes, my final point is, while there is all this, yes, being a good success, we have to understand that, make sure that your definition of success is not what the world defines as success, but what God has defined as success. Especially for each person, there is a thing that God has for you to do specifically. He has a story that he has written about you. He has a plan for you specifically. So it's possible to do everything and even have success in the world sense, amass a lot of money, what's a success metric of the world? So there is money, there is status, having your name everywhere, maybe you're having 1,000,001 followers, and you have all that, yet you have not done your own specific thing that God had for you. You would have lived a life that is wasted. When you get to heaven, Jesus is going to ask you, how far? This is not what I sent you to do. You did everything but what I had for you to do. So it ultimately loops back to this book of the word, law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate on it day and night. It is through his word that God will reveal to you your own specific will. By being in his word consistently, you are even able to navigate life from the lens of what he has for you. You may not have the big picture now, but as long as you continue to stay in the word and stay in fellowship, ultimately, the voice of God becomes clearer to you. The direction at every point in time becomes clearer to you. Your way, the way that he has made for you, becomes clearer to you. You kind of know, this opportunity is not for me. This is not what God has for me to do. At every point in time, there is a leading, there is a guidance, so that you will then get to good success. And for me, what I understand, that good success is not just about, amassing wealth or status. it is about doing the thing that God has made me to do. I don't want to do everything else and miss out on the thing that He made me to do. I would have wasted my life. And if I were to have any fear in life, and I don't, it would be that I do everything. I feel like I've even achieved so many dreams and achieved so many things, but ultimately I didn't do what God had for me to do. That's crazy. So while it is really important that we're excellent in the things that we're called to do, we have to make sure that it is what we're called to do that we're doing. And it's not necessarily something you figure out, by maybe say you go, let me go and do 3 days and nights of fasting, 30 days of fasting, so that God will reveal this and this to me. No, ultimately, I feel like in whatever it is that you are currently doing, just keep doing it well and stay in fellowship. God will ultimately direct and redirect you at every point in time. And if you make a mistake following God, that's okay. He has a redirection plan. It's like Google Maps. I feel like I've said this before. But yeah, He will redirect you at any point in time that there's a misstep, there's a mistake. But it's important to be careful that you are not seeing greatness from the lens of the world. All the people that, if you read through the Bible where it talks about, I think it's in Hebrews, where it was going through like the Hall of Fame of faith. That's what I call it, the Hall of Fame for faith. He said Abraham, by faith, he became the father of many nations. Sarai, all the people that were listed in that place, Ruth. When you look at what it is that they did, it doesn't really look like they were necessarily great things per se, right? When you look at their actual accolades, what they did that, that the Holy Spirit then inspired the writers, Paul. Was it Paul? Who wrote Hebrews? It's Paul. Is it Paul? I don't know. To have their name in that place. What is it that they really did? What is it that Abraham actually did? What did he do? All he did was leave the country when God said he should leave and follow the voice and go to one place. I mean, ultimately, he didn't even get to see the effects of his obedience. He didn't get to see the many nations. He didn't live to see it. I mean, he's in heaven, so I suppose that he knows. But you get my point, like, your greatness is not limited to the scope of the world. But again, I believe that God would have us be wealthy. That ultimately, if you're walking according to the path and the direction of God for your life, I believe you will not be struggling with resources, because it's what this tells us. He was broken so that we'll never have to be broken again. That he became poor, that through his poverty we might be rich. So I believe that it is God's will for us to be rich, to have a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? It's God's will for us to be wealthy. And I believe that if you're walking in the path that God has for you and ultimately following his voice and being diligent and consistent in ease through different seasons and through your process, you will ultimately come to a place of wealth. So there has to be that balance in understanding, okay, there is a time and there is a season, and that if I continue diligently in what God has committed to my hands, God is not unfaithful. God will always do his part. When due time comes, you will see the fruit of your consistency, the fruit of your diligence. Proverbs says that the diligent hand maketh fat. And it is a principle whether you are a believer or not. That's the truth. Most of the time, if you are consistently diligent in whatever it is that you're doing, it's a matter of time following the processes, applying wisdom, and even for the world, being shrewd. Ultimately, there's a success that comes from that. And it is the same thing as a believer. If God has committed something to your hands, you must continue in it. You cannot just be touch and go. I'm talking to you, Adaeze. Me, I'm talking to myself. I cannot be doing touch and go with this podcast and expect it to go to every nation of the earth. I cannot be doing touch and go and expect that all the nations in the earth will hear my voice. How is it going to happen? By putting 2 episodes today, tomorrow, and then going on a break for 5 months or 2 months, and then come back, drop 1 or 2 episodes, and then we do another. What's that? This babe cannot. Anyway, I dey want myself as I dey want una. Let's do better. I mean, I feel like we need to be better brand ambassadors of what Christianity is, of the life of a believer. We need to be better brand ambassadors. Like, we dey spoil the brand. Do you understand? We are giving Christianity bad PR because of our lives. World people know they see workings. They know they see enough workings. They're not enough great believers. Especially people in the field of that are not in ministry. Especially them. Because I feel like we have many great preachers and people who are in ministry, who are working the miraculous and doing, yes, there's that. But in the world, in the secular world, in you as a tech bro or tech sis, you as a architect, you as a designer, you as a content creator, you as a blogger, you as an entrepreneur, we got show workings. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm giving Christianity a bad reputation, and that's not cool. We gotta do better. I have to do better. Yeah. I'm gonna call it today here. And honestly, I'm gonna be listening back on this podcast because I feel like this episode was more for me than it was for you. Yeah, but I hope that you can relate to something. I hope that this blessed you in some way. I hope that this admonished you and woke you up in the way that you needed to. So thank you for tuning in. In coming episodes, we'll have some episodes with guests, we'll have some episodes alone, and we'll have some episodes that are teaching. We have some episodes that are just conversations. It's gonna be dynamic, and we will perfect everything on the way. So for now, enjoy, abide, and continue to stay in intimacy with God. Ultimately, that is what you really require. All these thoughts and all these corrections are things that only came by the Spirit. I didn't stay by myself and start thinking, there are ways for you to do better. It is also a product of the secret place. So ultimately, you realize that if I continue to walk with God and listen to Him, even when I'm not doing enough, even when I'm making mistakes, God will always course correct. God will always redirect. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you on the next episode. I love you. Bye.